Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and as always, I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, it's raining outside. And
Yeah.
we're kind of in the dumps a little bit today, but hey, no stopping this podcast.
Nope. Yeah, I don't know. I was feeling like great this morning. I got breakfast, had coffee, and I was like, I feel real energetic. I'm gonna do stuff today. And I started like cleaning and stuff. But then my allergies hit me, and I was sneezing a whole lot somehow. I guess maybe dust or something.
Yeah.
So I took some allergy stuff, but it didn't work. So I took another one, and now I'm just dead tired from those.
Yeah, man, it's just this dreary weather. Probably it's no bueno.
Yeah, I think maybe it is the weather, at least somewhat.
Yeah. Thanks, October.
Yeah, October.
Yeah.
But we still got some. I was gonna say we still got some steam in the tank, but that's not anything.
Got some steam in the tank.
I was like, steam in the engine? No, fuel in the tank.
Yeah, I can't help you there, bud.
I guess we'll just run off this chaos energy. I guess for this week we could talk about some design stuff, because I just wrote down some possible topics, and I was thinking we could just wrap up most of them into design, like NPC design and setting design.
Yeah, okay.
We could start talking about NPCs first, which I'm sure we've covered like in a scattered way in previous episodes.
Right.
But for this, I was just more thinking like, how would you describe your designing process? Because for me, it's usually purpose first, and then expanding from there.
Oh, well, what do you mean by purpose?
Well, it depends on, like, do I need this person to be a companion of the party? And if so, do they need to fill a particular role? Or do I need this person to be an enemy of the party? And if so, do I need them to fill a particular, like, mood or something like that? Like, are they just, like, say, a random person they come across in a forest? Is this a person who has, like, a strategy of some kind?
Oh,
are they going to have followers and allies and stuff like that? And
Yeah.
it's also very, like... it's very location dependent too. Like if you recall way back when we were playing Starfinder, when you guys were on an asteroid for a bit, and you ran into some goblins, and then like basically they could have just been whatever space goblins, but I sort of leaned into them being more like pirate scavenger-esque, and also they found this ancient machine that they had got working with their goblin technology again. And that partially was setting dependent, because the asteroid field that you were in was the remains of an old planet. So,
possibly Galorian, we don't know.
maybe, you don't know.
We don't know. Actually, I don't know any sort of the lore in Starfinder. But I think they shroud what happened to Galorian like in some serious mystery. I don't know if anything has been explored in the adventure paths or anything like that yet. So, I mean, I thought it was like, maybe it was like all the asteroids in the area, it was Galorian, and maybe some of it was still intact, because it was like a clockwork golem, right? We fought.
Yeah.
And a clockwork golem is like, especially like a sci-fi setting, all of a sudden this shitty mechanical clockwork golem when there's like robots walking around, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Well,
and it was like barely kept together, right?
Yeah, it was very much a patchwork job, like all goblin technology. Like even in that episode, they were using their like patchwork laser pistols that do very similar damage to a regular laser pistol, but if you roll a 1 on it, it explodes.
Which it did. And
it awesome. Sure did. One of the goblins, like, they rolled a 1, so the thing was going to explode, and then you have to roll another die. I think either a D8 to like throw it away from you, but if you roll a 1 on that, it explodes in your hand. So you got another 1, so you just blew up.
I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea that, okay, well, the thing's gonna explode, so they can't use it anymore. But at least they have one last trick up their sleeve, and they could just toss it, right? Like,
it becomes a grenade at that point.
Yeah, which I think is pretty cool. So, you know, I mean, it's fun, it's flavorful. I mean, like, I would just steal that for my space goblins if I was gonna use them. Like, you know, I would make like a, you know, I like the idea of like maybe there's like a goblin like a goblin just stole a bunch of robot parts and is now like piloting in it, but it's kind of like a hodgepodge mix of like a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, like a mech with like all sorts of different limbs.
Yeah, but it's like, it has like a thruster from like a jet engine, but instead of it using it as like to fly, it's using it as like a flamethrower. But like, there's a chance for it to just blast it away. Like,
oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, fun stuff like that. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the reason why we play these role playing games is usually finding a line between like heroic and like goofy, right? so you need to have those moments of just like, it's the dark times and it's really serious, but goofy stuff happens. So
yeah, I mean, that's another thing for enemies. Like, you want to also potentially add some like levity to those things. Like, you might have like we were playing, I mean, we haven't put the episode out still because editing is hard and other things, but we were playing a superheroes game, and I had like a varied range of enemies, and some were very serious, very heavy metal kind of enemies, and some were goofy names because I just love goofy names, and they would fulfill like different purposes as enemies. Like, they would change the tone.
Right.
Oh, also for Starfinder, because you mentioned it, they specifically left the fate of Galarian like a mystery for GMs to fill in.
Okay.
So, but there is that one location, like that giant space station, Absalom Station.
Yeah.
I don't think we were there in our game at any point.
No.
But that is where the planet was. They've got the Starstone there now. Or Sunstone, whatever it's called.
I think it's the Starstone, because the Starstone was on Galarian before anyway, and now it's
like the core of that station. And anytime someone asks the gods, "Hey, where's Galarian?" They're just like, "Don't worry about it, it's fine."
It's not necessary anymore. We don't need it. We don't need Galarian anymore.
I have some ideas for that, but I don't want to hint too much.
Yo, I don't know. Probably Rovagog got out. Because that's the only reason why that place would be destroyed, if Rovagog got out. That's my thinking, because like, where else? Why did anyone ask where's Rovagog? And they're like, don't worry about that, it's fine.
Yeah, why is no one asking that? But yeah, enemy design. So yeah, when we were talking about enemy design and then we trailed off. But yeah, like I would start from the point of thinking like, what is this character's intention? What are they supposed to do? What are they going to contribute? And sometimes I gotta like work backwards from having the character already present. Like, sometimes I won't stat out a person. It'll just be a rando that they come across. Again, like our Starfinder game, you guys came across Price. Obviously, I didn't have any statistics for him, so I kind of had to wing it. But then afterwards, I just went and I built that character. And like, I had to build him around, well, what is his job? What does he do? I remember at the time I just made up a thing for him because I think your character had asked him like what his interests are. So I was like, how do I incorporate that into this person now that I'm giving them like numbers?
we're putting math to him, so now he's real.
Exactly. So yeah, I was wondering, like, for you, where do you start when making an NPC?
All over the place, I guess. So sometimes, so for our Path of Inion game, I have all of the NPCs. Every time you roll on like on the strongholds and followers chart from like Matt Koval, like I sat there and went through all of the choices and kind of just pre-made a whole bunch of them. So and it was fun because I mean I went and I got some images off of Pinterest, and I was like, okay, I sat there and I was like, okay, what I just gave them names. Names I think are a great place to start. Like, once somebody has a name, you can kind of figure out who they are by like their name, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like somebody like Balthazar, like I haven't actually given him any stats or anything like that, but I know that he's a historian. I know that Balthazar is a pretty serious sounding name, so he might be a serious sounding person, and it's kind of goofy too. So maybe he'll take himself like, I am Balthazar or whatever, right? Like he thinks he's really important, but he's not, because it kind of sounds like kind of name. So I think names is a great place to start, especially somebody who's sticking around. or like for a long time, or maybe not, like not even sticking around for a long time, like anytime. It's like
it's hard to tell. I mean, and in any case, it's hard to tell who is going to stick around for a long time.
Yeah, right. So it's like I don't know, like Orgwak. Orgwak's name is even harder to pronounce, so I just assume Orgwak just doesn't talk.
That's fair.
Right? He like barely talks. He like gestures and like points, and it's even funnier because he doesn't actually say anything. He just kind of like points stuff out and like does like the I don't know.
Yeah, like he'll make grunts and stuff. But he speaks perfectly fluent Gnolish.
Yeah, but like he can't. But he can understand like common, but he just doesn't speak it because it will come out of a hyena's mouth and it would sound kind of stupid. So like
that is a good point about names though.
Right.
I usually end up doing names like afterwards.
Right.
Like I'll come up with like what the person is supposed to be, and then I'll name them based on that. But that's an interesting idea to like have the name and then say what kind of person would have this name versus what kind of name would have this person. I don't know if that sentence makes sense.
What kind of name would have this person? Yeah, you're right. Well, like anything, it's like, so like even if you're writing a story or being a DM, like names are important, and names can just it's like can subtly influence like your players or your world or whatever. Like it's like sometimes stuff is deliberate, right? It's like you name a character a certain way, so you invoke a feeling. Like when I named Suki, I was like I needed to why would I choose obvious Oriental sounding name or Japanese inspired name, because Suki is like Japanese inspired, right?
Yeah.
Like Suki Shiotora is obviously some sort of samurai-esque fighter, right? Or so it just like, and then the picture was there and it was just like, oh yeah, my brain, like my player's brain is like, yes, that makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes it's just like I find a picture that's cool and I was like, that should be a character, and then I just put that down and I'm like, what's this character's name? And I flipped through like the random name generator and I was just like, okay, cool. Other times it's just kind of like on the fly, like you guys just tell us a name, like Justice and Angel. Justice and Angel is literally nobody. Right?
Yeah, they are both very much nobody.
Right, so Justice and Angel are NPCs that I just let my players name because they weren't talking to them during our gaming session, and now they're traveling on their boat. So now Justice and Angel and like Payne just gave Angel an entire backstory about how he's like a male stripper, putting himself
or escort
through,
or whatever he prefers.
Yeah, putting himself through alchemist school, right? So, I'm just envisioning like Angel being this like buff dude, obviously very well looking and just like kind of really sexy all the time. And he doesn't shy away from it because he knows it's power, he can use it. But also I'm thinking, if he's an alchemist, I was actually going through, because you guys have a lot of alchemists on your ship, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, how do I differentiate those kind of, like, all the alchemists can't be all the same alchemists because the profession's so broad. Even in the book, when you want to be an alchemist, there's so many avenues you can go down, right? So I'm like, how do I translate that into a bunch of NPCs? So I was thinking maybe, since he's a really buff dude, he'd be kind of into trying to preserve his buffness and make himself even buffier. So I was like, okay, maybe he's like into like mutagens and like stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like, if you went to him and be like, yo, he doesn't study bombs and bomb making so much as he studies ways to enhance the body, right? So now that's like your go-to dude if you want to get some stuff to enhance, kind of buff yourself, right? But then it was who else is there? It's Justice, right?
Yeah, Justice. Is also that literally a random guy that we walked up and talked to as the city was burning.
Yeah. Right. He's
ended up on my boat,
right? Yeah. It's happenstance because everyone's like, "Is Justice there?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, Justice can be there." Can you remember his name? So Justice has to be, and just so happened I rolled on the chart and you rolled for an alchemist again, and I was like, okay, I guess he's another alchemist. So he is like, I was like, I don't know what Justice is gonna do, but I'll figure it out. Maybe Justice is more of like the elixir one, or like potions, or something like that, right? So it's like now he's a little bit more generalized, and then there's like Crow who makes like magic, like Crow can make bombs, or like Ordwak can make bombs or something like that. Like they're more specialized. So if you guys ever like keep them, then you can just be like, okay, I have all this gold, can you turn it into stuff? And then they'll just turn it into stuff for you.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, well there you go. That's a good example of NPC creation that was just like kind of built out of nothing. Like it's just like, I've had to figure out how to make all these alchemists different. So I looked in the book and what do alchemists do and how they make them different. This bam bam boom, done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's partially somewhat like I do like have some experience like doing stuff like that, like just having to figure out things on the fly. But yeah, having to stat those out also.
Well, I mean, they don't really have stats.
Yeah, I mean, not like they don't have to be like solid stats, but just like having a general idea of what they do.
Yeah, well, so I think if you're making like a non-combatant NPC, then they should just be like a non-combatant NPC. Like you should never like. I mean, you're in control of the story and what you want to do for your PCs. But it's like, when you sent Davis and Orgwak to go and watch Brienne, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not fighters,
so well.
So I had to utilize them somewhere other way, right? Like it's just like they're just. I don't need them to be like, well, we fought them and then we lost. It's just like they just ran away, like just and like I don't think. Loki, like I don't think that like I would really put them in danger. I don't think you guys would ever put them in danger because it's like they're not fighters and you guys are good people.
No, like even
right?
at the time when I told them to watch that NPC who ended up getting kidnapped and helping summon a dragon, I thought they wouldn't be in danger, to be honest. I thought that was the easy job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's okay. Like stuff just happens, and it was a fun way to have non-combatant NPCs that don't actually have math to them to affect the story, right? I don't think you should ever really have to employ the math all the time. Sometimes stuff is just there and then you get to just have it, like but also I've kind of changed some stuff with Matt Colville's like strongholds and followers rules that he has in his book. So he has like basically it's like they're just like really easy to run NPCs. They have a couple abilities per level that they have, and they have like regular stats that you just roll the dice and do your stuff. So I just put all this stuff into an Excel sheet and made it kind of look like and feel how I want based on like all of them across the board hit the same. It just depends on like their HP and their AC, depending if you have a frontline fighter or like a wizard in the back or like somewhere in the mid range. And then like they have 3 different abilities that they get at different levels, and they all can use them 3 times per day. And like so at any point like you guys want to like take Crow out into a fight, then Crow has stats that are just easy to run, and you're not running like a second character, which I think is an important part about like making an NPC. Like an NPC should never ever be like a PC. It needs to be just like as simple as like running like a monster, like maybe like a mid-tier monster, not like a final boss lich confusing mess of stuff, like
like very basic general NPC stats. Like I'm sure you have to convert them to be for Pathfinder 2 instead of 5e. But yeah, having those very basic general NPC stats is also like very useful, like because that is what I had done for your 2 companions in Starfinder before I just went and made the effort of actually making them full characters. Just because things kept happening where I realized, I need like full skill sheets for these guys. Right. Because some of those NPC stat sheets are very like they're very very simplified. They have like how hard like what this person does as attacks wise, how much health they have, some basic skills they might have. And in general, that's very useful for someone who doesn't need to be like in the midst of combat. Like that's just a thing that you might need on hand in case they end up in that position. It just so happened that along the way, I realized like I need more stats for these guys. just in particular for Starfinder, because we were doing some ship fighting stuff, and I was like, I don't know, I just needed more specific skills for them. But I do like the basic like NPC sheet concepts, because most of them I find are made for a person who will like probably hit most of the time, but have enough HP to be like around for a few rounds before going down.
Yeah.
Like it seems more like it seems like a I'm trying to remember the term. Glass cannon kind of thing.
Oh yeah. So I know you said about the skills, right? So skills are like kind of like a big deal, because like most games have like this big roster of like skills that you can do, right? Especially like in Pathfinder / Starfinder, there's like, I don't know, 20, not 20, probably like 15 skills or something like that. The way I did it, well, the way I kind of copied it over from Matt Koval's rules was, I chose like 2 skills that they're the best at, right? So following kind of normal progressions that, you know, once you like, you're like master and like expert and you get like the bonuses to it, like they'll follow that progression, and then the rest is just like the normal train progression. So it's like 2 skills that like, if I roll, they're roll at a higher number, and then the other skill, then I just have a literal number that's just everything else, right? And then so, you know, I know that, let's say, like Crow might be, because he's kind of like Ranger-esque, maybe he's good at survival, so one of his skills is survival, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe survival and like crafting alchemy could be, or perception or something, like, because he's the lookout, right? And then everything else, I know what Crow can do, so it's like Crow is probably kind of athletic, so he can roll on athletic, you know.
Yeah.
But like there are some, like, there's just like the only thing that like I think like I would say they can't roll on is obvious knowledge skills that they're not going to be able to do. Like also diplomacy. Like Crow's not a very talkative character. That's like Jasper's deal, right?
Yeah.
Or like Davis's deal, right? So
yeah.
So Crow in a situation where diplomacy is needed, nah, he's not gonna roll. But if Crow wants to intimidate somebody, then yeah, Crow can roll an intimidation check. Like you could even simplify it even further and just be like, this is the stat, this is the number for like a skill that they're probably good at, and this is the number for everything else. And then no one's ever really gonna bring the numbers into question, right? Like your players are never gonna know the numbers and bring it into question, because they're like your NPC, right? Like if they succeed, they feel really good about it still, because, you know, they're their friend, you know what I mean? They kind of like, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of like a really strong bonus for like having NPCs in the party. Is that even like there are moments of success still feel like party moments of success.
Right, like it's like having a familiar or an animal companion. It's like the same kind of thing where it's like, you know, they're not their character, but it's like they're associated with it, and they're like a part of their whole. Like I still think NPCs are like a part of your character, right? It's like your ally. It's like when you hang around, you playing Skyrim, you have your follower come follow around you, and it's you and your buddy and your dog, and you're running around trying to save I don't know, Viking land. Right. Yeah,
that's actually a pretty good reference, because I've been playing Outer Worlds a whole lot recently, and like I'm always like I have my favorite companions, and I always want to do their quests, and I always bring them out with me, and sometimes they're not super helpful in combat because of how I did my super hack build. I can basically like do it solo, so they're mostly there just to be shot at by enemies, so I can so I can distract them. But at the same time, like I just really like having that character around, and I do think that sort of applies within the RPG space, where like you can just have a character who's good at stuff and all your numbers are great, but it's more fun to be there like as a team.
Yeah, it's just another layer, man. Like it's like Mass Effect. Like my 2 favorite companions in Mass Effect, like of all time, it's Garrus,
of course,
and I know Garrus forever, my love, Garrus, and
Care Bear.
The Care Bear, and what's the Krogan's name from Mass Effect? When I'm drawing a blank. Rex, yes, Garrus and Rex, yeah. And it was just like, you know, sometimes Garrus would like you know kill steal me, right? Because he has a sniper rifle out. He's just like, bam, and I'm like, oh damn, okay, cool, thanks, Garrus. Or like I would see like the dumbass Rex just charge in and like murder like 3 dudes, and I was like, oh damn. Sometimes I'll just stop and watch him just murder a bunch of people, or watch him just get wrecked. Like it's just all fun. Like, you know, it's cool, and like, you know, NPCs are your friend in the party. It's also a good way to like have the players kind of like talk to somebody that they don't have to feel suspicious about, because everybody who isn't in the party is like, oh my god, they're obviously lying to us.
Yeah, what are they up to?
Right, there's always like the superstition or the, you know, the untrustingness of parties to literally anybody who isn't in the party.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous world out there.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows who's lying to you, and it leads you into a vaguely vague ruse of a trap, and you're like, oh no. I thought you were stuck underneath the tree.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I could talk about that character too, because like a few episodes ago I mentioned how I set up this encounter where the PCs were traveling. They heard someone calling for help, so they ended up being drawn to that because of an NPC in their party. And when they arrived there, they saw someone who looked like they had been trapped under a tree because of a lightning strike due to a recent storm. And yeah, the intention was for this to be a trap. So like when I made this person, I started from the point of, well, I mean, this was actually one that was sort of partially inspired by just seeing a picture, but also partially I wanted to have like that bandit trap.
Yeah.
So I started from the purpose of, here's a trap, and then I'm looking up like bandit or criminal stats in the GM guide, and I see this charlatan person. I'm like, oh, she looks cool. But she's more made for tricking people, so this will be more of a tricking trap than just like hopping out of the shadows kind of thing.
Right.
And then yeah, I just worked from there. Gave her like some dudes, gave her some stats, gave her some spells that, you know, I thought would work better, but here we are.
No, it's still good. Like it's just, oh man, like it was good. Like I liked it a lot. But it's hilarious that like, again, I grappled somebody that you meant to run away.
Yeah, you did that also in another Starfinder, in our home Starfinder game.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I don't know, grabbing people just seems like a cool mechanic that people don't use often. Apparently that's the way to stop everybody. Hopefully you guys don't figure it out.
Oh, I'm gonna make so many monks.
So many monks. There's an army of monks. Now I'll just grab you. Yeah. That's the. I mean, okay. So and for like, how often do you plan out like villain NPCs, like antagonist NPCs as like a group, right? Like do you just like when you put together that bandit crew that was gonna do the attacking, like how do you tackle that?
Well, pretty much when I was doing that, like I just saw the stats for this person, and I saw that they were fairly bard-ish. So that was kind of a thread I was going down, because we do have a bard in the party. So partially I was imagining them as being like a evil version of that character in some ways.
Like a duo.
Yeah.
Instead of a solo.
But yeah, when I'm thinking of like large scale villainous NPCs, like I keep going back to our Starfinder games because I've had it on the mind so much recently. But there was, like, I did mention at least a couple in that game, and one was more related to your character's backstory. He was the guy who would like betrayed you all, and he was the reason that you two had started on a prison planet in the first place. But then there was also like the much larger scale obvious danger, the guy who was part of the oh man, what was the name of the evil cult in that setting? I forget what it was, but the people who wanted to destroy everything, the Devourer cult, that was it.
Yeah.
And I also mentioned that guy, and the thing like with him is, I think I only mentioned him like 2 or 3 times. The first time was you guys seeing from far away. Like, just to summarize our Starfinder game, which you can find on our channel, Renegades of the Drift. Just check it out, look it up. It's really good. Like the first episode was you two, you and Deanna, who were my 2 players at the time. You had started on a prison planet, but then this massive breakout, well, not massive breakout, just like this evil looking ship showed up for the purposes of breaking out this one guy, you managed to escape in the confusion. And I had described that ship, and then later on down the line in a future episode, I had described like the guy who had got away. I think it was like either in a news broadcast or something like that.
Right.
I just described that guy and like vaguely what he was related to, just because I wanted to seed that a bit. He might be relevant later. Who knows? I can't, like, the thing is, I can't predict the direction of the game. I can't predict what you guys are going to do, especially in that game where you have so many options of where to go and what to do there, because like you don't just have a continent to explore, you have multiple continents on multiple planets. So
right.
like for that, what my thought is I'm gonna put this guy in the world and I'm gonna just like build up what he's doing, and then we'll see how relevant that becomes. Versus a character who is, this is a person who is like directly related to your characters who did something to hurt them in the past, right. And he's got his own stuff going on, and you might be on that trail, but I don't know what you're going to be doing afterwards, or even in between that if something comes up as a distraction.
Yeah, right. And so okay, yeah. So like, I mean, you have your narrative roadblocks. So like, I think of them as roadblocks, right? So it's like it doesn't matter like. It doesn't actually matter, I think, where the PCs are going, because if that dude's a bad guy and he's important and he's doing stuff, then he'll just be where he needs to be to make the story interesting, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if we're going to like fantasy, it's like, okay, well, you can be we have choices. We're gonna go to the dwarven kingdoms in the mountain. We're gonna go to this crazy mysterious island, or we're gonna go to the desert, right? And I have a bad guy who's prominent and he's just doing bad guy things. It doesn't matter where the PCs go, they're just gonna be there, right? And they're gonna be like, oh, they followed us here, or oh, they got here before us, or you know, they're hot on our trail. Like it's like, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, it does matter. I mean, because it's like, it's D&D, so you know, you choose your own adventure, right? Like you have the agency to tackle problems wherever it is, as long as like, you know, you decide, like if the players decide which place to tackle first, maybe the bad guy is there, or then maybe they're not there, and maybe they did the other thing that they didn't have the choice to do, right? So it's like, well, you know, you guys went to the desert for some reason, now the guy went to this island and found the artifact that you guys didn't do, but you guys instead, they got an ally in the desert, or they found like some treasure in the desert, or raided a tomb, and they got the second part of this MacGuffin thing. And then, you know, or they went to like the dwarven king, and now the dwarves are aligned with the bad guy, right?
Or you might have run into like one of their followers or thwarted some other part of their plan. I think that might largely have to do with like, I guess, pacing. Depending on how soon you want that major enemy to show up, like your players might be more likely to run into them in some other place. Like if they say go to one location versus another, then how quickly you want that final confrontation to be might also affect whether or not whatever they end up doing is there. Because like RPG stuff, or D&D, or Starfinder, Pathfinder, whatever you're playing, it's usually very malleable. Like your dungeon can be like, if you have a dungeon map, if you need to, you can change it from just being like a regular stony dungeon to maybe it's under a pyramid now, or something like that.
Yeah, now there's sand everywhere.
Yeah.
Or something, right? And it's just like even you don't have to change the stuff in the rooms, really. I mean, you don't have to change all of it. I mean, like, I feel like if there's goblins, it's one where there's goblins everywhere, right? Like, even if you're in a desert, just be like, they're desert goblins. They're, you know.
Ooh, that actually sounds cool.
Instead of, yeah, right. And instead of them having like, I don't know, spears and sticks, maybe they have like scimitars or blow darts, or because they're in the jungle. You know, it's just like real easy because it's just math, right? Like you just change the math up a little bit, and all of a sudden, like you don't have to worry about the goblin's HP or how hard they hit or whether or not they're trained with the weapon. Just forget about all that stuff. Just go look at what the blow dart does and roll the dice. You know. Don't worry too much about whether or not it's like balanced or anything like that. A lot of times PCs will just make it out because they're just there's 4 of them typically, and there's only one of you, so don't worry about them. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I again like have been trying to make things more difficult lately. But as always, the party always manages to, except for the one time when I killed your one character, Keely.
Well, because Keely's like, I sacrificed Keely's life to make sure the party didn't die.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I mean, like what happened to Keely was, I think, partially based on dice as well. It is hard to balance when you're trying to compensate for one die can be 20 different numbers.
Yeah, well, I was totally fine with it because I knew, like, Keely knew what he was doing. At least Keely's player knew what he was doing. You know, and Keely sacrificed himself to protect the people that he thinks are important to protect. Then he'll do it, right? Yeah. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, Keely was functioning as Keely should have functioned. I don't know. It's just hard to like when I'm thinking about balance. Sometimes I'll look at the book rules and it'll say this size party of this level should face this difficulty creature, and then I'll like form the encounter around that. But honestly, I found in no matter what game I've played, because those are like built-in rules for Starfinder and Pathfinder, and I even found like a post online for doing that for Mutants and Masterminds. And I would rely on those things as guides, but I found that like no matter what I play, even if I try to make it difficult based on those guides, the PCs usually do better than I expect them to.
Yeah, it's just sometimes like they don't take into consider like party composition.
Yeah.
Right. They don't take into consider gear choices. Like it just so happens that you're fighting a bunch of Ents and you have a fire sword and our fire axe, which is probably the best thing to fight Ents because they have like weakness 10 to axes and weakness 10 to fire. So all of a sudden, like this horrific, you know, tree forest or whatever of doom is now just a cakewalk because
you're doing all that extra damage. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So it doesn't matter. Like, or you know, sometimes you just don't have the right tools for the situation and the fight just gets really hard. Like a bunch of like you just don't have any ranged attacks. That I think that like is a downfall of one of the parties is one of the games or the campaigns I'm running is like the PCs just there's just no way for you guys to deal with flying creatures. As far as I know, you guys don't barely have any spellcasters or ranged weapons. So
yeah,
you know, a wizard flying pretty high shooting down fireballs, you guys are probably gonna die. Or just book it out of there, right? Like,
yeah, running away is always an option.
Running away is always an option, right? So, you know, I don't know. I also think that like Pathfinder is really good as room with like the way that they designed their math, where it's like whatever level your party's at, you can go 4 up or 4 below in terms of level for the NPCs or like the bad guys. So it's like, you know, I know that if you guys are level 4, I can go up to like a level 8 and the math will still work out for you guys to defeat this thing eventually, right? Because, you know, let's say like a fighter already has probably weapon expertise or whatever, so now you're adding an extra +2 to it. You get to a flank and all of a sudden that's like their AC is lowered by 4. 4 is like that's a 20% increase in efficiency, right, on your die roll just by that for being a fighter in the right positioning. Or like, you know, you're able to cast a spell, but maybe they are able to succeed, right? But there's like a special ability where it's like, all right, but they're still getting enfeebled 1. Now all of a sudden all their dice rolls are less than 1. Every time they make like a fortitude save or something, they're less than 1. You know, it's enough for the PCs to after a while to compound their abilities to like get an edge to defeat that monster, right? Yeah. Especially if they go in there with like planning, like, you know, getting the fire axe to defeat the level 8 tree man, right? Who would be a really good, like, I would never just drop a bunch of players into a fight with something that's, you know, the upper echelon of their or the upper limit of their like, you know, enemy cap, I guess, right? The encounter level, you would say. I would never do that to a PC without any sort of like ability to gain some sort of knowledge, or if I know that they have something in their inventory that's gonna arsenal to solve the problem, right?
Like a tiny demon net.
Yeah, like a tiny demon net. Right?
Against a giant demon.
Yeah. So it's pretty fun. To just use big monsters. You to forget about. I mean, it's also fun. I don't think Pathfinder is really built that well to handle hordes of stuff. I think hordes of stuff is not that great in Pathfinder because normally you then have to be lower than the party. And then like the math works the other way, right? So, you know, you're just rolling a bunch of dice and not really getting anywhere, right? And then the PCs don't really have to have too much of a challenge, especially like I go back to being like a fighter. A fighter's really good at clearing out crap. So it's like they're probably going to crit and just take out one of these things in like a one shot anyway, if it's kind of like a horde type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I think Pathfinder kind of actually, I think Puff and Forrest, when he went over Pathfinder 2, he mentioned this. Where like Pathfinder kind of hits its stride when it's like, you know, equal to the amount of PCs or less kind of deal, right? So, you know, there's the action economy is more on the PC side, but the numbers are more on the enemy side, right?
Yeah.
Because you know the numbers are just harder. Like the PCs get to do more stuff because there's less wait time, or there's less turns in between their next turn, but the numbers are there, so you're more likely to miss, even though it's like a psychological thing too. Like the 3 action thing in Pathfinder makes it feel like you're doing like a heck of a lot more because you're rolling a heck of a lot more dice, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just like if my 2 bits of running encounters in Pathfinder 2 is just like maybe go with equal to, I mean, obviously do hordes if you want, but I find that like when I did so the only time I think that was really tough was the kobolds. When you guys are fighting kobolds, they're trying to get into the kobolds their kobold temple, right, where they set a bunch of traps ahead of time. They had the height advantage and they had time, right? Because you guys had to get to them, right? And they could sit there and have a couple rounds of chucking a bunch of d20s at you, and eventually a couple of them rolled like, you know, high, like 17 to 20, and managed to get a couple good hits in before you guys got up there and murdered them.
Yeah,
right.
You sure did.
But it was like I don't know if I would just put like, I mean, I don't know, I might run a bunch of skeletons or something, you know what I mean? Like put them in front of you, but then it's like, well, I guess they're just going to kind of stand around because all their numbers aren't big enough to really deal with your stuff.
But also, it kind of depends on how, like, what kind of fight you want to run too, like the mood you want to set for that fight. Because, like, yeah. I do recall, like, Macy and, was it Rook? Rook?
Rook.
Like,
Rook, yeah.
Like being in that funnel, and I don't know, like I just really liked plowing down a bunch of people. But at the same time, because their party had been separated during that fight, the other 3 people in our party were on a totally different level of the dungeon, and they had to fight like this kobold shaman, and I think there were some other kobolds in there too. And that was like a completely different kind of fight going on. So
yeah, that's true. It was mostly just like trying to stop the kobolds from flooding into the other section where the other half of the party was fighting. Yeah, because they were actually fighting some real people. A bunch of like regular ass kobolds, like because they had like the dragon mage there, and I think I threw in a couple of the I guess it's like, so the dragon mage would be like the head leader guy, right? And then after that it's like kobold scouts or something, because they do a little bit more damage and they have a little bit more abilities. So then I had a couple of regular kobolds up there, and they're all and I basically let them into a trap, right? Because it was like kind of like a kill zone. So they're all surrounding these dudes, and they're all getting shot from every angle. People are charging them with spears, and then you guys are trying to like stem the tide of other kobolds trying to rush in and get to the bottom where, you know, the other people are, right? Like,
yeah. Because I think they were they were down somewhere. I think there was some sort of elevator thing, but we wouldn't have had time to bring them back up. So like, each part of the fight was a necessity. Even though we were up there just mowing down dudes, it kept the rest of the party from being overwhelmed while they were having like this challenging encounter. And
which is pretty cool too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I haven't used the hordes in a while. I think I've only really stuck to like, you know, one to maybe 2 people, or like actually the fearsome 4 were 4 bad guys on a side, which I thought was pretty good. It was like I thought it was gonna be more of like everyone pairs off and fights one guy, but instead it was, you know, just a total wash from the Furious 4 got wrecked. But that's because you guys are awesome, and I don't want us to you know, to make light of that. That was really cool. But yeah, you know, maybe I'll try hordes again, but I think I have to find a good place for it.
It does really depend. Like, we can face a whole bunch of skeletons, but there has to be like a reasoning for it. Just like we were in the kobolds' place, so of course there's a ton of kobolds coming at us. regardless of how squishy they might be, or I guess crunchy in the case of skeletons.
Yeah. I don't know, let's see. I haven't run like a necromancer in a while. Maybe I'll do necromancer stuff. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh boy.
The dead, wise.
Oh great. Oh no, Helen can handle that easier than Macy can.
Yeah, I guess so.
Helen has stuff for that.
Yeah, well, Helen's amulet specifically says that she can't be touched by undead, but it doesn't mean you can't be poked by a sword wielded by an undead.
Oh really? Oh no.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's powerful, but not that powerful. Like.
Oh, okay, I thought I was immune from melee attacks from undead, but I guess not.
You are, but just by
by like their actual hand.
And anything that has a touch spell, they can't affect you. So if a lich is like, I need to touch you up, and then they won't work.
Okay, well,
I need to learn disarming. But if someone shoots a lightning bolt at you, like that's just straight up lightning. Like,
yeah, like I figured that would be a big deal.
Or if undead shoots an arrow, I mean that arrow is always going to be an arrow. It doesn't matter who shot it.
Yeah, it's not like a dead arrow.
Yeah, it's not like a real.
It's not an arrow made of bone.
Yeah, I mean that would be a pretty cool monster to fight. I feel like I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna have because we made those. I stole a skeletal. I think it was when you guys went to the that temple, that Fey temple for the centaurs, the centaurs temple.
Yes.
And you guys fought a bunch of I think I took the skeletal Hulk thing inside of it, but then I reskinned it to be like it's just a mass of like dead centaur bones, like a bunch of centaur bones.
Yeah. That thing's terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. You guys got like slapped by it. That's pretty good. Actually, yeah. Okay, so like more on encounter design, right? Sure. In general, like theming of like bad guys, right? So I was like, all right. So this temple, the centaurs they were worshiping like this dryad deity who's like the almost like the lady of the lake because it was by a lake kind of deal, or just like super special fey, archfey kind of person, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, in my world, fays like creatures of like outsider origin, so like fays, fiends, elementals, like stuff like that. Like they never actually die; they just get like smashed, and then their essence gets sent back to like their home plane. They like coalesce back, so it's like, they're actually immortal, but you can keep killing them over and over again in the material plane and sending them back, right, to get rid of them. There's other ways to do like to stop that or actually kill that. So then I had like a witch, right? A witch in my world, witches are they're bad fae, right? There's good guy fays, there's bad guy fays, and they're witches. So the bad fae witch put a curse on the good fae lady of the lake and basically corrupted her soul and turned her into a fae undead hybrid, which is like utter blasphemy. And because of that, she can't reincarnate in the Feywilds, right? So she was stuck, right? And the centaurs are like, oh crap, we gotta fix this because then we need our Fey lady back, right? She needs to go back and then she can come back to our plane eventually. So then I was like, okay, cool. So she did that. Shenanigans happened, and inadvertently the undead Fey captured the Fey witch who turned her into undead and then trapped her into the temple, and her corruption is now leaking and fucking up the place because she was once in charge of the land, and because she's all messed up, the land's getting messed up. Yeah. So you guys went into the temple to try and stop it, and first thing you guys encountered trying to get into the temple was a bunch of like rotting ents you guys fought that were disguised as just trees, and then it was really funny because I have all these trees from my wargaming. I just put them on the table, and then I just started
used the trees as the minis for that, which was really fun.
Yeah, it was just like I just started moving the trees around, which is great. And then so that's thematic. It's like a corrupted undead natural thing, right? That was the theme. And went inside, and the centaurs were trying to send centaurs in for the problem, but they haven't been able to get out of the temple, and they all keep dying, right? And I was like, okay, Skeletal Hulk, they're amalgamation centaur bones, right? Because horses are actually pretty big, and
yes,
smash a couple of horses together, then it's like all of a sudden this huge thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, how did they lose all of their like meat, right? What happened to them? Where'd all their flesh go, right?
Where did it go?
Yeah, there you go. And then I was thinking about how gremlins, right, are these, like, they're evil fae as well, but they're like little tiny evil fae. But I was like, okay, they have this kind of like this undead theme. So what I'll do, I'll just reskin the ghoul as like a little pygmy man kind of thing. Because I was thinking about like those mummy movies back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one where like they had like an evil forest where like a bunch of little pygmy men ran around, and I was thinking that, right? Because I was like, that's kind of like a little nature gremlin-y kind of evil thing. So then you guys walk down one hallway, and they said the hallway is just full of bones, right? You don't know why. And then these little pygmy men came out from the shadows, right? And it's kind of like, they're kind of like ghouls kind of thing. So I gave them like the stats of a ghoul. It was fine, but I told them they were small, but it didn't actually matter. And they had like these, paralyzing claws, and some people got paralyzed, and that was kind of fun. But then you guys defeated them, and they kind of ran away back into the bones, because they were like kind of like manifestations of all the crap that was going on here, right? And they were the ones who basically stunned all the centaurs and ate them, which is terrible. But yeah, it's kind of like you're like going through this dungeon, and then it's like you're trying to make sense of it, like it's like, and you're trying to keep it thematic. It's like yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you did bring up a good point about like just reskinning things to make them fit like with your setting.
Yeah. Or the situation at hand, right? It's just whatever. No one's gonna know that a small pygmy man is any different from like a ghoul. Like a small pygmy man ghoul is any different from like a regular ghoul. Like I think there was a thing back in Pathfinder 1 or older version of 3.5 D&D where it's like, different sizes had different weapon sizes and stuff like that, right? Like there's a whole, more math and more tables you have to reference. But in Pathfinder, I'm pretty sure it's just like, even if you're a small character wielding like a sword, it still does the same amount of sword damage. It just doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
And I like that.
There is like a tool in Starfinder, I think Pathfinder probably has something similar, that just gives you the ability to pretty quickly put together a basic like enemy NPC. Like you say, I want it to be this sort of template, I want it to be this kind of class, it'll be a combatant or expert or spellcaster or whatever, and it'll give you some stats for that pretty quickly. And I've used that for some like just straight up enemies that were only going to last like one encounter. But there is like just taking something that you want to do, like taking that skeletal Hulk or taking those pygmy dudes and just like I guess again reskinning them so that like when they come across your party, like they have damage and statistics and abilities that are like would make sense for a creature like this, but that they don't specifically have to be what you see in the book if you were to look it up.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted like an undead thing that wasn't a zombie, but like is not as powerful as like a vampire. And I was like, yeah, a ghoul's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like it's kind of weird. And it's like, why am I being paralyzed? And this thing's kind of just like, it can stalk, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like one of those things. Or maybe I would just take like a vampire if I wanted to make like an undead wizard sorcerer dude or something, and be like, yeah, okay, well, this vampire is pretty close to what I want. It has a bunch of spells and it has a bunch of casting, and I was like, yeah, whatever. It just won't suck blood. Like, I don't care. The party doesn't care, but the party doesn't know what the stats are.
No. Most of the time, no.
Yeah, I mean, even if they do, that's a good thing too, because especially if you're running for, we play in each other's games, right? And we obviously have the monster manual, and what if we use the same monsters, right? We will just know. Right?
Yeah, I gotta keep you on your toes.
Yeah, cause you just call it something else, and then I'm like, I don't know what this is, and then it'll just die in like 4 rounds, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, if you want them to, if you gotta think of a way for your NPC to get out of there, then you better have something in mind, because your players are here to kill.
Yeah, man, I think there's cool magic items and ways for you to just dip out, or like the ability to fly is a big one, or just just will it, or just will it to get out of there. Just be like, okay, you beat him, but he runs away. Kind of deal. Just use smoke bombs. Cheese it.
Run away. Yeah, gosh, we've talked about that for 55-ish minutes. But yeah, like NPCs are a pretty big part of the game, so I guess that would make sense. I was trying to think of what else we could talk about just to fill out the last bit of this hour here. I don't know, how do you feel about music in a game?
Well, yeah, it's good.
Cool.
No, I like to keep it consistent. I think that for me, the music is more there for me to get into the zone.
Yeah.
And to really kind of set the mood, specifically, because like I don't really use music during narrative moments or like when I'm describing stuff. I only use music when it's like the combat scene where it's like rolling initiative, and I still can't find a good like combat. Like I always use the same playlist every single time for all the combats that I run, or all the sessions, all the campaigns, everything is just the same playlist.
Yeah,
I always use.
Which I actually like really like, if I'm being honest, because it's like whenever because I have like a bunch of different combat playlists for different games and different mood playlists and stuff like that, but like I don't want to use the same music that you use in your like combat, because I think I asked you, or I stumbled across the playlist at some point, and I was like, oh, it's these songs. But like I don't want to put them on the combat playlist that I have, because like these are the songs for when Ramon is running a game, and I have my own songs for
that's
when
like
I'm running
the
a
songs
game.
that I think about. Yeah, well, that's the songs I think about when I think about fighting in, like if I'm reimagining the fight. Like that's like the soundtrack to it.
Like for me, it's like if you're watching like a Spider-Man movie and the Superman theme starts playing. Like
oh true. That's just like, yeah, that's fair. I mean, but I don't have that problem, because to me it's like it is so the music I use primarily for my games is the soundtrack to Iron Blood Orphans. I forget what the composer is name, but he's like a pretty good anime composer. But like the Iron Blood Orphans like soundtrack has like the right balance of like swashbuckling adventure kind of feel, and it's like it has a lot of violins, a lot of like orchestral stuff, but it's also just like upbeat and punchy, and it's just like it really has like a very quick, snappy kind of vibe to it, right?
Yeah.
With a level of grandeur to it, because sometimes I feel like combat music sometimes can get like too grand, too epic, when it's like you're literally just stabbing a bunch of goblins in a cave. Like it's intense.
It does depend on like what tone you want to hit. Like for me, like I was saying, like I have different like for, say, if I'm doing like a fantasy thing, that I have very specific, like here's my forest playlist, here's my inn playlist, here's my city and town playlists. Just because I really like to get into that, and I like to change the setting, and this is kind of inspired by like video games mostly, where I will use those music tracks to change the tone and feeling of the setting. Like for my city playlist, it's a lot of if you've played RuneScape, it's a lot of the tracks from like Falador and Varrock, like the large cities that you might be spending a lot of time in. So those tracks are already made to fit that mood. And for Starfinder, I have tracks of different levels of combat. So I have my ship combat playlist, I have my regular combat playlist, and then I have my epic boss battle playlist, and that's where I put all like the very large bombastic stuff. But for the regular combat playlist, I'll put more like, not necessarily calmer, but less like orchestral stuff that still sort of fits as like a combat setting. So like for me, I really like doing these music playlists, and I really like leaning into them. That's why whenever I'm playing on Discord, I always set my music bot, which is like, sometimes it's a pain switching between different playlists, but I always want to do it because it's so important to me to set that mood and that tone using that music, because like you said, like it's not just for the players, it's also for me as well. Like if I'm describing you guys going through a forest, when I hear that like flute or woodwind music playing in the background, then for me, it's easier to get into that mood. And then when you're in an inn and it's playing some like light violin, like that sea shanty tune from RuneScape again.
Yeah.
Again, like it just makes it easier for me to get into the mood. It makes it easier for me to like, it's less work for me to describe it because you're already like processing, oh, this is the kind of thing I would hear in this space. Or like here we're in this city, so there's like these horns. It's very official sounding because this is a very big, busy, and populous and important city. Or like we're out in space doing combat, so here's some cool synth music, versus like, I don't know, more like guitar and more like rock stuff over on the ground doing combat. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly I'm mostly just lazy too. I really like it when you switch even when you were playing on Roll20, when you just switch the picture, like it really helps. But you know, I'm kind of lazy like that, so I don't do that crap. But that's why you're a better DM than me.
Oh shucks. I will say partially. There is a lot of Calvin at work and being bored. So I'll be like when I'm at work, I'll use YouTube for my music at work, and then I'll just be like listening to stuff, and then like I want to make a playlist, or I'll listen to like the soundtrack from a game, and then it's like, yeah, this could fit in like when I'm running something like video game music, especially because it's specifically made to be in the background of something else happening.
Yeah, and like on loop too, right? I find like they're usually typically like longer or loopable songs.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing I'll lean into, like Outer Worlds. Again, like I keep talking about Outer Worlds just because it's my favorite game right now. But there is a lot of, because it's very Fallout. So there is a lot of those very quiet background tracks, and I use them mostly for ambience. So like when we're not in a combat scene or something, when we're just doing some basic RP stuff, like I'll just have that stuff in the background so that you're still sort of in this futuristic spacey mood, but there's just some like calmer music playing in the background there.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is just kind of like really my favorite thing to do.
No. And I find, just to put a positive light on just having like one playlist that you always kind of use, it's kind of like, so I think it was Rebecca mentioned it when we played the fight music.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, for some reason this fight music is getting me pumped. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
that's our theme song. Exactly.
It's like your theme song. The theme song came on, right? And I really like, so using Iron Blood's Orphans soundtrack, it was like, because it had like the beginnings, like this big kind of dun dun, like kind of really grand opening. Mm-hmm. That's why I feel like it's the first song to play after everyone, like after initiative is checked, right? And then it's like, play the song, the thing comes on, and then it's like, it's your turn, and then the first person gets to act, because you know it feels kind of more like what's the word, like I was gonna say like movie like, right? Like it's like the fight scene happens, and then it's just like the music turns on, and then it's good to go. But yeah, also too, when you're like narrating stuff, and then like, and sometimes when there's like indecision in the players, it's like, oh, what do I do? And I'm always leaning towards like, if you're an adventurer, you should be like a hero, right? You have to trust, you have to like forget about the odds sometimes, just go for it.
Yeah, never come with the odds.
Yeah, right. And it's like, you know, that, like I found that playlist, like sometimes I can just be like, what are you, some sort of coward, or are you a hero? And then the music will pick up, and it's like, no, I'm gonna do it, and then they pick up the dice and roll. Like, you know.
Yeah, that's the best part of the playlist. Like, any music playlist, like when the music just happens to sync up with what's going on at the time. Like I was playing with another group in Toronto, and like they ended up fighting a bunch of spiders. Like it was a spider swarm, and the song that was playing, the combat music plays like at the time, was like more, oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it, but it just fit, like they're fighting a bunch of creepy spiders. So I kind of like lead into how, like normally I would just be describing like the swarm coming at them and attacking them or whatever, but I was like at that moment specifically describing how they were moving and everything like that, and trying to really emphasize it. It's just like when you were playing and you're in that moment and you're trying to think of what to do, and then like the music builds, there's this heroic swell, and you're like, yeah, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah, man, it's a fight for your life. It should be intense. You should feel that like that tension of like I better do this now or I'm never gonna get the chance, or this is it. This is the last thing before I go down. Like make the roll. Just the dice sometimes.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to use that music playlist in my playlist, because it's like, this is for when I'm a player. I need this. I can't let anyone else have it.
True, cool, yeah, awesome.
This is my pump up jam.
Yeah, this is how I get hyped.
You guys can have, I don't know, whatever I'm using. I use a lot of Ratchet and Clank for my regular combat playlist in Starfinder. Yeah. Because it's very pumped up like that, and then a lot of Destiny in my boss combat playlist, because Destiny is very, very orchestral like that. So
yeah, it's surprising. I mean, that game is. I played Destiny for a while, and it was good, but I've stopped. But the music's always kind of on point. So
yeah,
I totally understand it. But yeah, man, I don't know. For some reason, like I really can't get out of that playlist. I really can't get out of that soundtrack. Everything else is just not right anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly fine for me.
Yeah,
because that is the theme song for our battles. But yeah, like as I guess to try and make this relatable to other people who aren't listening to our playlists, like playing in person is a bit of an iffy thing, but like if you're playing online, there are ways to let other people listen to your music. What I use is the Rhythm bot for Discord, because it lets me just put in a link to a playlist and then it'll play that like it's a different person who's also in the chat. So if you can find a way to do so, and it's a way that won't be distracting to your players, like I would avoid any music that has lyrics in it, just because that might be distracting in a way, like it'll be like talking over you. But like mostly video game tracks, possibly movie tracks. I think movie tracks are more meant to be in the foreground when they're playing, while video game stuff is meant to be in the background while you are controlling the action. But yeah, like it does help a bit. It's sort of like setting the mood with a visual. If you're playing online and you change the image that people are seeing to, say, like the image of a town or of a forest or whatever, just to say this is the kind of setting you're in, it's another way to help with that, except like auditory. Right. Even if you just have a loop of like generic background noise, like this is the kind of noise you would hear, like say around a dock in a fishing village. It is just a way to help set the mood of a scene, or of a battle.
Yeah, right. Or like if you find, like, say, like if I kept playing the same track every time you guys were back on the Mermaid's Dagger, and then that's like the Mermaid's Dagger song, and then as soon as you hear the track, you like get into that headspace of like, okay, I'm back at home.
Yeah, yeah. That's basically what I was aiming for with my RPG playlists. Was once this track is playing, we're in an inn or a tavern or whatever right now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, music and RPGs. See if you can get it in there, because it's definitely helpful. And if it's, as long as like it's not distracting you from doing all the other stuff, other crap you have to run and do as a DM, I think that it definitely adds a lot to your games. Yeah,
it does have the drawback of another thing you have to maintain, but at the same time, you have to play personally, I guess, for yourself and your group if the benefit outweighs the cost.
Yeah. Sure.
For me, I would say it does every time, but I mean, it's up to you as an individual to decide that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess maybe we should wrap it up.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We did cover some pretty interesting stuff. I think we covered a lot for NPCs. I feel like NPCs is a thing we can talk about a whole lot, because it's such a big part of the game, and it's such a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's and it's like I think it's like the reason why, like, honestly, I think it is like the reason why we play is to interact with all these different characters.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, right? So and it's also really intimidating to just try to, like, you're already like, if you're already not comfortable, or if like you going from like a player from playing one character, now you have to play all of the other characters. it could be a little intimidating, and maybe even just kind of running a bunch of other bad guys, because you're trying to get it all right. Don't worry about getting it all right. no one's even gonna notice. No one's fact checking you. No one's gonna be like, well, that's actually like you used the attack of like a white dragon when you were fighting a red dragon. No one's gonna care.
Yeah, and if someone does, well, it's your game. So.
Yeah, and be like, well, red dragons in my world fight like white dragons or bullcrap like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make them do whatever you want them to do, whatever fits for you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's just math.
Yeah, stupid math.
Stupid math, just a bunch of numbers. Don't matter to me.
Never did anything for anybody. But yeah, I think that's the episode. Yeah, just I'm trying to think of some other way to summarize all of this, but I cannot because my brain is fried. But yeah, if you are a GM out there, don't worry too much about doing everything right the first time. Just make the NPC you want to make and roll with that, or borrow it from a book and roll with that. And change it up if you need to. And as for music, it's a great way to set the mood. If you are able to use it as non-distractingly as possible. I think all of those sentences made sense. I was on autopilot for the last few seconds.
No, you're good.
All right, good episode. I didn't think I would make it.
We're here.
If you like that episode, just slap a like on the video and maybe drop a comment below about like anything you want to hear us talk about. If you want to contact us, you can check us out on the socials on Twitter and Facebook at Win with Dice. Check out our website winwithdice.ca. It's a pretty nice and cool website. I'm gonna hype up my own work on the website.
You did a good job. It looks great.
Yeah, it's so fresh.
Yeah,
it's responsive. You can look at it on mobile.
Wow.
So yeah, check us out winwithdice.ca. And, as always, just hit that subscribe button so you get our episodes in your YouTube feed. Ring that bell so you get a notification every time we upload a new video. We will be uploading every Wednesday, though, so, every Wednesday at around 12 p.m. Eastern, you know where to be.
You know where you need to be.
Exactly. But for now, that's the end of the episode. So, Ramon, you want to say anything else before we head off?
Nah, man, give him the outro.
Oh, sweet. Let me wind up for it. Just keep on. Wait, no, it's until next time. Until next time. That was the first part of it. And then I say, keep on winning with dice. That's an outro.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.